Hello, good evening, good day, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Ask Abhijit show. I hope you're all doing great. Class is in session. Let's see who all is there in attendance tonight. Today, I can see Nesh, Triptopal, Mrinalini, Anurag Kashyap, Sumit Kumar Ghosh, Agnibha Mukhopadhyay, Karan Nalawat, Delphi, Siddhartha Sarkar, Guru Prasad, Akhil GK, Pritam Sharma, Geopolitical Dubey, Nikhil Negi, Saurabh Badoria, Pritam Sharma, Devansh Vyas, Ip Bio Rice, Absence, Ipsha Om, Vinod Jadhav, KHN, Simrandeep Singh Baga, Mayur, Baby Cheeks, Abhi Shorts Video, Ritvik Raj, Advait, Nutan, Roshan, Siddharth, No One, Pratham, SG, Rishikesh, Prachit. If you think you're bad, then I'm your dad. Rishi Patel, 3698 user, Harsh Suman, Arjun Arya, Vladimir Zelensky, Vishnu Mohanan, Mr. Royn, Abhishek, Tejo Meg, aspirant Anil Singh, cruise master Samarth, Lelouch, Yatnadhara, Totan Chaudhary, Meghdip Maiti, Mithul, Tarun, Anurag, Nesh, Miguel Diaz, Sagaru, Sagnik Datta, Siddharth, SG Pratham, and so many other people. Thank you so much for being on the live stream. And yeah, so as you know, Dungar Singh Chauhan, Vivek Kumar, Rishi, and everybody else. All right, all right. I'm gonna stop greeting you all individually now because otherwise I'll take all day. So let us get going with the questions. Today is a live chat, live stream. So I'm gonna take questions only from the YouTube live chat. So go ahead, ask me your questions, ask me your best questions, and I will take as many of these as is possible. Let's see. Let us see. Let us see. What questions do we have? Uh, Okay, let us begin with Simrandeep Singh Bagga. What are your thoughts on people having the fear that Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji is turning into a dictator? Prime Minister Modi is turning into a dictator. There is fear among the people. Which people, I wonder? Okay, so let's take it logically. Just logically, without any emotions involved in this. Okay, let's consider actual dictatorships that we are aware of. Which dictatorships do we know of? We know of North Korea, definitely a dictatorship. We know of China, definitely a dictatorship. No democracy there, no such thing. Okay, so imagine you go to North Korea, you go to Pyongyang, okay, and you go to the main square in Pyongyang, where the two big statues of Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Kim, the father and grandfather, their statues are there. Okay, you go there to the main square in Pyongyang and you shout that Kim Jong Un is a dictator. Down with Kim Jong Un. Dictatorship nahi chalega. Go and do that in Pyongyang. What's going to happen to you? You will never come back from Pyongyang. Now imagine you go to Beijing, you go to Tiananmen Square, and you say over there, down with Xi Jinping, down with the dictatorship, down with this evil Chinese Communist Party. What's going to happen to you? You will never be seen again. This is what we mean by a dictatorship. Okay? In India, you can go to Delhi, you can go to Jantar Mantar, you can go to whichever part of Delhi you want. You can shout, Modi is a dictator. What's going to happen? Absolutely nothing's going to happen. You can say anything you want about Modi. Various politicians have been known to say that Modi is this, Modi is that. People every day on social media say Modi is this, Modi is that, Modi is a dictator, Modi, whatever, whatever, whatever. What happens to them? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. There is no price, there is no cost to claiming that Mr. Modi is a dictator. Now, go to certain states of India. I will not name the states. Allegedly, some states are like that. You go there and you say something against the chief minister and see what happens to you. So, where is the dictatorship and where's the democracy? I think this is just logical, right? What fear do people have that Modi is turning into a dictator? Where's the dictatorship? Where's the one party rule? I mean, people vote for the one party. There are thousands of other political parties in India. People can vote for those. They choose to vote for a certain party. I mean, that's called democracy. What dictatorship? Some people claim that India's constitution is under threat. Let me explain something to you, my friends, and go and ask any constitutional expert. Go and ask this to any constitutional expert. Has India's constitution been ratified by the people of India? I'll tell you something. The Constitution of India has never been ratified by the people of India. What do I mean by ratified? When a bunch of old guys wrote the Constitution in the 1940s, after 1947, 48, 49, whichever year it was, when that bunch of old guys mainly wrote the Constitution, created this gigantic book, 500 plus pages, did they ask the people of India, did they give the people of India a chance to vote on the Constitution or not? That do you accept this Constitution or do you not accept this Constitution? That is called ratification. In any genuine democracy, the constitution has to be ratified by the people. Only then can it become a legitimate constitution. In India, the constitution has never been ratified by the people of India. Just like the partition of India was done by a bunch of people, they decided what was best for India. Similarly, the constitution was imposed upon India like this. So let's not talk about saving the Indian constitution like it's some book that the gods have given us. It's a man made document which has never been ratified by the people of India. It's been shoved down the throats of the people of India. Okay. So let's understand what the truth is and let's look at things logically, not emotionally, and not on the basis of people's opinions. There are certain YouTubers who go around saying constitution is under threat and democracy is under threat and Modi is a dictator. Just take a look at the ground realities. Where's the dictatorship? Go and claim that Modi is a dictator. Go and say whatever you want about Modi. What's going to happen to you? Absolutely nothing. There you have it. Okay. Let us. Okay. Guru Prasad. Guru Prasad says, "What's your opinion on the death of the Iranian president? Is it planned by the US or by Israel?" Look, whatever has happened, whatever information is out there in the public domain, is there any clue in that information that points towards the US or Israel? I have seen none so far. I'm not saying it's out of the question that there may have been a foreign hand in this. I'm not saying it's out of the question. There's always a small possibility. But do we have any evidence that points in the direction? In that direction? We have zero evidence that points towards a foreign hand. The government of Iran has not made any statements or any claims blaming a foreign power in this matter. So what happened is that the president of Iran, Mr. Raisi, had visited Azerbaijan, the neighboring nation. Would you like to look at the map? We should look at the map, of course. So let's bring the map on. Where is the map? Let's bring it on. So you should know about Iran because it's our neighboring country. Temporarily, we have a artificial nation in between, but it's going to be soon gone. So Iran, as you can see, is in the middle of the screen now, right? To the west of India, we have Iran. And if you go to the northwest of Iran, you have Azerbaijan. So Mr. Raisi had visited Azerbaijan and he was coming back. He was returning by helicopter. And it's a hilly terrain out there. And Iran also has a province of Azerbaijan. Yeah, so that's where the crash happened, somewhere here in the northwest. And the helicopter, look, I've said this so many times, okay, that helicopters are not especially reliable. You should avoid traveling by helicopters as much as possible. I don't know why world leaders and important people like to travel by helicopter. It's risky. And this helicopter that Mr. Raisi and Mr. whoever else, the other people were traveling in, it was an old helicopter. It was not being serviced or whatever, licensed by the original manufacturer. It was somehow being maintained. I'm not sure if it had GPS. I'm not sure it had all the terrain avoidance mechanisms or whatever. And they were flying in fog in hilly terrain. And you know what happens? You get disoriented. And if you look at the images of the crash, which I will not put on the screen, it looks like controlled flight into terrain. Okay. It looks like that, which means that the pilots were in control of the craft, but they simply didn't realize that there's terrain in front of them because of the hills and the fog and all that. That's what it looks like at first impressions. Obviously, I am no expert when it comes to plane crashes, but I have seen lots of images of plane crashes and aircraft crashes and helicopter crashes, and this doesn't look like from the crash site. It doesn't look like an aircraft or a helicopter that had lost control, that was no longer under the control of the pilots. It looked like something that was flown into the terrain, which means that they did not realize there's a hill in front of them or whatever. So that's what it looks like to me at first glance. Eventually, the truth will come out if it does. Okay. And from whatever I've seen, it doesn't look like there is a foreign hand, but let's wait for the Iranian government to make its official statement about the cause of the crash. That's all I have to say. So I will not make any baseless claims based on zero data and information that maybe some other country was behind this. Iran obviously has enemies. We know that. Iran has enemies in the region. Israel is clearly an enemy because Iran says that Israel has no right to exist. The US is an enemy because of historical reasons. I'll not go into that. And there are other enemies as well. Pakistan is no friends with Iran. Yeah. Saudi Arabia and Iran have had this very trying relationship, and much more. So yeah, but there's no evidence that there was a foreign hand behind this. Geopolitical Dubey says, will there be any adverse impact on the India-Iran relationship after the demise of the president of Iran? I don't see any. I don't see any significant impact or any impact, adverse or otherwise, on the India-Iran relationship because of the untimely and accidental death, it looks like, of Mr. Raisi. Okay, we have to understand something. Mr. Raisi was the president of Iran. Doesn't matter who's the president of Iran. Okay, in the past you've had other presidents. I can name a few. Mr. Rafsanjani was the president at one point in time. Mr. Ahmadinejad was president, and so on and so on. The president of Iran is not the supreme authority in Iran. The supreme leader of Iran is a whole different person. The president comes way below that. The president of Iran is not even the number two power in Iran. Okay, Iran is an interesting political system. The true power is the supreme ruler or supreme leader of Iran, and that definitely is not the president. So when it comes to foreign policy, etc., well, they have a foreign minister, they have a president, and it looks like the president and the foreign minister are in charge of this, but actually the entire policy and everything else is determined from up high, from the supreme leader of the country. So if the president dies, it's no big deal. I mean, it's a tragedy and it's a bit of instability, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the true decision making and all that is done by the supreme leader of Iran. All right. So no adverse impact as far as I see. Devansh Vyas says, I'm a high school student going to UCL in London this year. Why are most Western academic circles woke? And any tips on dealing with it while there? First of all the best, congratulations, etc., for going to UCL in London. Look, right now, when it comes to the cultural milieu of the West, when it comes to the entire political, all those sensitivities and so on, it's all being driven by what's coming out of the US. So in the past, let's say 5-7 years, the US has gone increasingly hard left, and we see this phenomenon which we call wokeism. It's all over the place now, wokeism, and it's something that they have been engineering. The academics have taken over the US. See, a bunch of leftist, Marxist, etc. academics took over the US academic system the 1950s, 60s onwards, 60s onwards. 50s was a trying time for them, the McCarthy era. But eventually, these leftists, these lefties, these left loonies were not really loonies. They took over the entire academic system, and they've got a stranglehold over it now. And the entire uh, atmosphere in the academic system is now very hard left, and wokeism has emerged out of some of this, especially after the pandemic. Yeah, after 2020, it became fully mainstream. And the UK is one of the vassals of the US. It's one of the puppet states of the US. The US has four hardcore puppets. Okay, it's part of the Five Eyes. The US is the main eye, and there are five small eyes who are the satellites of the US, the satellite states. That's Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. So the prime puppet is the UK. Even Canada is a secondary puppet. And it's not really the UK, it's London. Okay. So when it comes to the nation of the UK, it's a poor third rate nation attached to London, which is a first rate economic hub. Okay, it's the West's the central money laundering hub of the West. So the UK is a poor third-rate nation attached to this first-rate financial hub called London. So London is a satellite of the US, which means that the cultural sensitivities, academic system, etc., will be an echo, a copy, a slavish copy of whatever is coming out of the US. So that's what you will see over there. You will see the same attitudes, the woke attitudes. You will see strong anti-India attitudes, increasingly stronger anti-India attitudes. Uh, if you stand up for your culture, if you say that I'm a proud Indian, you're gonna be ostracized, you're gonna be targeted. You're gonna see this. So my advice to you, when you go there, is, I mean, look, if you are a very strong-willed, combative person, go ahead and take them head on, take the bull by the horns. But if your objective is just to go out there, get an education, get your education, and get your degree, just do it quietly. Benefit from the system. There may be some benefits in the Western. Look, the Western academic system, despite all its ghastly flaws, is better than the garbage that is the Indian academic system, which is why it makes sense for lots of people. I tell people who are wondering whether they should go abroad or not. I tell them, go abroad, go study abroad, go work abroad, get the experience, get the money, get everything, and then if you want to come back, you can come back and contribute to your country. So I would say that go ahead, get the degree, get whatever education you need. Don't try and fight the system there, uh, unless you're a strong-willed, bull-headed person, which is good if you are. But I would not insist on doing that. So go there, get whatever benefits you can get from there, and then you can come back or do whatever you like. If you want to stay there another 20 years, do that. Amass some money, good amount of money and experience, and then you can come back and contribute to the country. So that's what I would say. So you have to recognize the facts of life. The facts of life is that the Western academic system is deeply woke these days. It is very hard left leaning. It is very strongly Hindu phobic. Okay, and there's a subtle Hindu phobia, or sometimes overt Hindu phobia, and definitely an anti-India sentiment, pro-Pakistan sentiment. So you're gonna have to be prepared for this mentally and deal with it accordingly. All right. Okay. Tanmay Mittal says, how would you reform the Indian political system? I would turn it into a true dictatorship, a true monarchy. That's what I would do. A meritorious dictatorship. You know, dictatorship in which only the most meritorious can reach the top. That's what I would do. I mean, yeah, you can have. I mean, India is the birthplace of democracy, so it will be a hybrid system. You should have democracy at the lower level so that people can elect their own local representatives who will take care of taking out the garbage and ensuring that there's proper electricity and water supply and all delivery of such services and delivery of governance, delivery of law enforcement, all of that stuff. All that should be taken care of at the lower levels, and the people should vote for the representatives there. But at the higher level, it should be a different system. I mean, that's what we always have had in the country. And whenever if you look back at the past 5,000 years of Indian history, whenever India has done tremendously well, it's always been a dictatorship at the top. So that's what I would do. You can take what I said with a few grains of salt if you so wish, or a few grains of pepper. Spice it up a little. Okay. Rohan says, why do physicists look down upon engineers? I've heard the same from you as well. It reminds me of back and forth of Sheldon and Howard from Big Bang Theory. Okay, I don't know about Big Bang Theory. Look, mathematicians look down upon physicists. They consider physicists to be, ugh. These physicists, they manipulate mathematical symbols like stupid fools. That's what they think. So the mathematicians think that they are at the top. Then you have physicists. But among the physicists also, it's the theoretical physicists who consider themselves to be the superior ones. And the applied physicists and all of the experimental physicists are like the menial servants, so to say, in the hierarchy, in the class system or whatever system you want to call it. Then below the physicists of all different kinds, you have the engineers who don't do any intellectual work. They simply take all these principles and laws and they apply it in the real world. That is donkey work. You see, donkey work is very, very low, very low. And then you have people who indulge in chemistry and biology. It's even lower than that. So that's kind of the caricaturized, cliched way of looking at things. Look, the truth is, you need very few theoretical physicists in the world, but you need tons of engineers. Without engineers, nothing works. Okay, so I don't know what you've heard from me. I'll tell you what, without engineers, nothing works. So you need engineers. The theoretical physicists are the ones who have their heads in the clouds. Okay, a theoretical physicist will stare out of his or her window for 6 hours in a day, looking outside, and that guy or girl is thinking. That guy is working. Okay, for a theoretical physicist, work means staring out of the window 6 hours, 6 hours straight, and then scribbling symbols on the whiteboard or blackboard and stuff like that. That's the kind of work they do. So their heads are in the clouds, and whatever discoveries and insights they gain, whatever discoveries they make, whatever insights they gain, they're gonna be useful 20 to 50 to 100 years down the line. Nothing, no use today. Okay, but without those insights, nothing. The great technological leaps don't happen. But it's the engineers who make things work. So I think everybody has an important place in the entire scheme of things. I don't think anybody is higher, anybody is lower. Without mathematicians, we don't do physics, right? Everybody is important, but they have their own different place in the scheme of things. And without each of these places, nothing works. So that's how I see it. There's no high or low, up or down. But yes, I mean, this is a humorous way of looking at things. That there's a hierarchy, unspoken of hierarchy in things. Well, maybe you're watching too much of Big Bang Theory, but yeah, well, all right. Vivek Kumar says, what happens if India and the US simultaneously reject one China policy and recognize Taiwan as a country? Look, words and actions. I always keep emphasizing this. What's the difference between words and actions? I can say tomorrow that Tibet is a free nation, but what difference will it make? There are facts on the ground, right? The facts on the ground is that China is in possession of Tibet. So it's about diplomacy. It's about maintaining certain appearances and all that. It's about certain principles, etc. So the Chinese insist that everybody should adhere to the one China policy, but they don't want to adhere to a one India policy, for example. So what happens if India says that we reject the one China policy and Taiwan is a country? Well, then the Chinese will take certain actions against India. They will first of all put out this barrage of abuse and harsh diplomatic language, and then they may change some more maps, and they may rename some more cities of India to Chinese names. But at the end of the day, there's nothing much more they can do. They can try military action, but then they will obviously face consequences. So the point is that we have a global order, a global economic order in which everybody cooperates economically, and we want to keep that going as long and as smoothly as possible, because India benefits from the global economy, which includes China is a major player. China benefits from the global economy that includes the US, which is the largest player. The US also needs China in the global economy. They need China's cooperation. They need all those cheap goods and whatever from China. So everybody needs each other. Now we want to make this system as smooth and as well lubricated as possible. So as far as possible, we try to pretend that okay, we agree with you and all that, and so on. But at the end of the day, when things go really bad, you can take certain actions. So the Chinese, if you remember, they used to issue these visas, stapled visas to Indians who came from Arunachal Pradesh. They would not give an official visa; they would staple a visa on the passport. That's what the Chinese used to do. So they have all these things they do, but they are way more powerful than India. That's why India had to just quietly accept that at the time. I'm not sure the Chinese still do that. These stapled visas. If they still do, then so the thing is, when it comes to the dynamics between India and China, India is a nation that is, from the hard power perspective, just 1/4 of that of China. China is 4 times as powerful as India, roughly. If you add up everything, the economic strength, the military strength, the nuclear strength, and power projection, and blah blah blah, all of and much more. You add all of that up for India and for China, you will see that China is 4 times as strong as India in terms of pure hard power, brute force. But India is a rising, growing economy, and China is not so growing that much anymore. And China's long-term future isn't great. So there's all these dynamics that come into play and all that. So Right now, if in India and the US both went ahead and simultaneously said that we don't recognize the one China policy in Taiwan as a nation, there's not a whole lot China can do right now, especially if the US is also involved, in addition to India. But I don't see this happening. What's the point of riling the Chinese up? Keep your head down and work towards growing your economy. Like Deng Xiaoping said, hide your capabilities and bide your time. Hide and bide. Okay. Guru Prasad says, why is modern art so weird and it makes no sense? So I'll tell you what. You go to a modern art gallery in, let's say, some big affluent city in India, Mumbai, Delhi, high class art galleries. You go to London, you go to New York, you go to these places, and you see modern art. It makes no sense. You're right, Guru Prasad. There'll be this big canvas on which there are these flashes of color and some scribbles, and yeah, there you have it. And the valuation is $3 million. Or if it's in Bombay, it's like 13 lakh rupees for one, 6 feet by 6 feet square, weird squiggles and all that stuff. Why is it like that? Why? Let me explain to you. See, it's like this. Okay. Let's say that I'm a very rich guy. I want to save taxes. So what I'll do is I will commission a painting by one of my famous artist friends. Okay. So I'll pay this guy whatever money, and this guy will spend half an hour drawing the squiggles and these weird shapes and whatever, half an hour on the canvas. And then I will ask my other art critic friends to do an evaluation of this painting. And this is my painting. It's now in my possession. Okay. Because I commissioned it. I paid my artist friend $10,000 for that. So I paid my artist friend $10,000 for this half an hour of work. Now I own the painting. Now I ask my art critic friends to evaluate the painting, and they will say that they will come to a consensus that this painting is worth $10 million. Okay, I paid 10,000 for it. I must have paid my art critic friend some money for this, and they gave an evaluation of this painting as $10 million. Now I take this painting and I donate it. I make this donation to the local museum or to the national museum or whatever. So if I do this, I get a tax break of $10 million. Does it make sense now? I get a tax break of the value of the painting. There you have it. It's all money laundering. It's all tax evasion through legal loopholes. So that's one of the reasons why our modern art is so stupid. It makes no sense. And yet you have all these weird paintings valued at so much money. When it comes to real art is aesthetic. It's beautiful. Van Gogh. I mean, if you look at Van Gogh's paintings, my God, they're achingly beautiful. There's something incredible. If I've seen paintings by obscure painters, Séraphine de Senlis. Nobody remembers her. Such incredible paintings she used to make. She obviously, okay, you may not know about her story. She had schizophrenia and so on. The thing is this, that art the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, and everybody sees art differently. But much of modern art, I think we can all agree, is garbage. And it has probably something to do with money laundering and tax breaks and all that. Okay. That's an interesting question. Yes. Okay. Tamogna Bashu says, are the Macedonians and the Romans genetically related? Let's go back to the map. Let us go back to the map. So we're talking about the Greeks, the Macedonians, and the Romans. Now, the Romans are not. See, the Roman Empire existed about 2,200 years ago. Yes. They fought the Punic Wars. Then you had the rise of Julius Caesar. And then there was like these a few centuries in which Rome, this region, that area that you're seeing on the map, they conquered much of it, all the way from the British Isles, much of Germany. They conquered Iberia, which is Spain. They conquered North Africa, much of it. They destroyed Carthage and Judea and Anatolia, which is now Turkey. and Eastern Europe, Thrace, which is Western Turkey, etc., etc., etc. And of course, they conquered Greece. Julius Caesar personally conquered Greece, and since then, Greece became a part of the Roman Empire. Now, the question is, are the Macedonians and the Romans genetically related? So the Romans themselves were not a monolithic ethnicity, just not one ethnicity. There's a bunch of ethnicities that existed in Italy, northern Italy, southern Italy, etc. And even if you go to Italy today, there are so many different provincial and dialects and languages that people speak. So it's not one ethnicity. But let's say Italy is just one ethnicity, Romans, and then the Macedonians, you would have to consider them Greeks if you want to take a very high level view of things. So the Greeks and the Romans, there is obviously their neighbors. Even today, in parts of Italy, especially the eastern portions of Italy, there are people who consider themselves to be Greeks, even today in Italy. So they're neighbors, first of all. There is a very small, piece of maritime real estate, the Adriatic Sea, which separates Italy from Greece. Today it's Albania. Historically, it was Greece. Albania has a strong Turkish influence. So it is said that after the Trojan War ended, lots of Trojans and other people, they escaped to Rome, to Italy. And it is believed, if I'm not mistaken, that Remus and Romulus were also descendants of Greeks or something. Remus Romulus are the mythical founders of Rome. Of course, it is named after Romulus, who killed his twin brother Remus. They were both raised by a she wolf, etc. So I would say, I'm going round and round, but I'm giving you some context. Actually, it's not actually just going round and round. My point is that these are very closely located countries or regions geographically, and there definitely is consanguinity and genetic affinity between these two populations. And especially if you look at the past 2000 years after the Roman conquest of Greece, there was a significant intermingling of the populations, and eventually Byzantium, which is Istanbul, today's Istanbul, historically Constantinople, became the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire after the Western Roman Empire fell to Christianity. The Western Roman Empire never disintegrated and died, actually. It simply transformed or transmogrified into the Vatican Empire, the Catholic Empire, and the popes became the emperors, the de facto emperors. But the Western Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire still existed in a different shape and form. It was Byzantium, the Byzantine Empire. And even during, at the end of the First World War, I think in the late 1910s or very early 1920s, when Greek soldiers liberated certain islands from the Turks, from Ottoman occupation, the people of these islands, they lined up at the beaches to see these Greeks, and the Greeks were asking, "Why? What are you staring at us for?" And these people were saying, "We wanted to see what Greeks look like." And the Greek soldiers said, "What do you mean? Aren't you Greek?" They said, "No, we are Romans." So they, until very recently, consider themselves to be Romans. And there's a whole lot more. I mean, if you go to Turkey, okay, Byzantium, there is the city over here called Erzurum, which used to be a Roman city. Many of these cities used to be Roman cities. There is Aridne somewhere here. Where is Aridne? I can't find it right now. Adrianople, and so on. So yeah, there's a significant Roman history over here, and eventually the Greek and Roman populations kind of became the same. The Greeks obviously would be very unhappy if I were to say that. They have their own very proud traditions, and rightfully so. But yes, genetically they are South European people, not quite white, not quite white people. Yeah, so there is a significant amount of genetic affinity between the two peoples. Okay. Um, Anand says, Anand says, I'm going to attempt my last chance of a government exam. I'm very much worried about what if I do not get through the exam. Please suggest something about how not to worry. Okay, I'll tell you what. The best way to not worry, I'm giving just a basic principle, general principle. You're trying something, and you very much want that to happen. But if you want to worry less, you need to have plan B and plan C as well. Okay, if this doesn't work, I need to have a backup plan. Okay, I'll do that. And if that doesn't work, I need to have one more backup plan, which is plan C. That's the only way you'll be free from worry. Otherwise, if you only have one thing that you are relying on, then that's going to give you a lot of stress, a lot of tension, a lot of worry. So I'm not sure you have that, and that's why you're worried. In that case, I would say that, look, life is long. Okay, it's the percentage of people that get through in these government exams, it's let's be realistic, it's very low. So I wish you the best, but in case this doesn't work out, I would say that you need to take some time and work out alternative approaches as to what to do in life. That's what you have to do. So look, I'm assuming you're in your 20s, which is fine, which means you're in the early days of your innings in life. Okay, you've scored 20 runs, you do score 100. You can score that one way or the other. You can do it with the reverse sweeps, the regular sweeps, square cuts, or by accumulating singles, whichever way you want to do it, right? So find other things also that you could do in life if this doesn't work out. That's what I would say. That's the advice I would give you at this point in time. And of course, you should do your best. You should do your best. I'm assuming it's IAS or something that you're doing. So yeah, study hard. I hope it works out. But if it doesn't work out, I'll tell you that it's not the end of the road. When you are in this high stakes exam situation, it looks like if this doesn't work, it's the end of the road for me. It's the end. Everything is over. That's not the case. Okay, these exams and all, they just one stepping stone to something else. And sometimes if it doesn't work out, it may actually be good for you. So that's what I can tell you through a lot of experience. Okay, I've gone through all these exams and stuff, 10th, 12th, whatever else. And looking back, it was actually no big deal. Okay, so I'll say that even if it doesn't work out, there's a lot you can do in life if you just apply yourself. So all the best, and don't worry so much. Ahem. Rahul Gupta says, what's your take on New Caledonia? So there's a situation going on in New Caledonia. I don't know if it's still going on. Let's go back to the map. New Caledonia is this little nation in the South Pacific region. So let's find it. This long nation over here is New Caledonia. Okay, it's an island, and it's got a couple more islands, right? Uh, okay. So New Caledonia. So this island, it essentially comes under France, under the jurisdiction of France. You can say it's a French colony. Some people would say that. And there's been some rioting and stuff over there. I'm not sure what they've been asking for, etc. What the people want there, why the riots are happening. I've not really looked into that. I'm aware that some rioting happened there, and there was kind of emergency law, emergency measures were imposed by the administration. I think they shut down the internet, they shut down social media, etc. because of and there was some violence and some arson, some rioting. Some people apparently, unfortunately, lost their lives. That's what I know, but what it is about and all, I have not really looked into it that much. It's definitely one of these French colonies that still continue. And I believe that the French actually wanted to give the nation independence, but there were referendums in which the nation said no, we don't want independence. So you can't blame the French for still being in control of, in charge of this nation. That's the limited amount I can say about this. But yeah, it's interesting. Okay. Honestly, IDK says, should I do a BA, a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations, or should I do a BA LLB? So one is Bachelor of Arts in International Relations. The other one is a Bachelor of Arts in LLB means law, right? I mean, if I had a choice, if I had these two choices, what would I do? Look, if you want to make money, you become a lawyer. Okay, if you're a lawyer, a good lawyer, and if you can become a part of the right legal system, especially higher up, you can make a lot of money in India. So if you want to be financially prosperous and stable and independent and all, LLB makes a lot of sense. I'm just saying be practical. But if you really are passionate about international relations, etc., then you can do that. But then what are the job prospects? You can become a college teacher, a college professor, university teacher, reader, lecturer, professor. uh, that's about it. Or you can go and try and go get into the IFS, which is a very very small intake every year. So being a diplomat is really 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 hard. So I don't know what are the job prospects when it comes to international relations. Okay, you can either be a teacher somewhere, or a professor or a lecturer or a reader or something, assistant professor, college university level, maybe whatever other level. Or you could join a think tank and become an intern and become a writer or something. So there's limited scope for making money and being reasonably prosperous and financially independent and stable when it comes to having a BA in international relations. But if you become a lawyer, I guarantee you money is there, especially if you're a good lawyer and if you make the right connections and right friends, let's say. So yeah, from a realistic perspective, I would say money is important, boss. Without money, there's nothing in life. People will say that money doesn't buy you happiness. I'll tell you what, poverty doesn't buy you any joy. So money money buys you independence, not happiness. Then what you do with your independence is it's entirely up to you. So yeah, that's what I would say. Okay, where is it? 3698 user says it just came out. The news just came out that there was one more river behind the Nile which was used to transport building materials. Okay, we're talking about Egypt over here. Okay, let's go back to the map. And the map is staring at the South Pacific. So let's reframe our orientation. We go to Africa. We go to Misr. We go to Egypt. Okay, let's take a look at the satellite image because that brings the Nile out in stark contrast against the desert. So you can see this long green tongue in the desert, Egyptian desert, and that is the Nile River. And obviously, here's the Nile Delta, Cairo. And if you come to Cairo, Al Khairah, then you will see the pyramids of Giza. So there's 3 pyramids. Where are these? How do I locate? Where is it? Where is pyramids of Giza? Okay, I'm just gonna do a Google map search. Okay, to save time, pyramids of Giza. Where is it? Here it is. We find. So there are 3 pyramids that we are aware of. And the big gazillion dollar question has always been, how did the ancient Egyptians construct these gigantic pyramids? That's always been the question. Take it out. Take a look at this. These are the pyramids. Pyramid of Khafre, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the Pyramid of Menkaure. And there are smaller pyramids as well, pyramids of Queens. And the question has always been, how did the ancient Egyptians construct these gigantic monuments? And uh, and you will find people saying it was all aliens because they don't have any answer as to how was this done. Enormous monuments constructed without electricity, without modern technology. So now I read this somewhere a couple of days ago that apparently this river, the Nile, there used to be another branch of this river which flowed somewhere around here on the banks, and these pyramids were constructed on the banks of this now defunct branch of the river Nile. And apparently all these materials were transported or by boats or whatever other mechanisms on the river. And apparently they discovered the river, its existence, by doing some surveys under the ground, by using ground penetrating radar or something like that. So that would be a very logical and plausible explanation as to how these gigantic building materials were transported. If there was a river that flowed right over there, then would have been really easy to transport. So that kind of seems to answer the question as to how the pyramids were built. But then the question arises that how did the river flow in exactly the right pattern that these 3 pyramids, they line up just like the sword of Orion? So if you look at the constellation of Orion, okay, then you will see that Orion's belt. There are 3 stars that make up Orion's belt, and these 3 stars, their alignment is exactly the same as what the ancient Egyptians made the alignment of the 3 pyramids there. So yeah, but yeah, maybe As long as the river flowed nearby, they could have been able to transport the stuff and build the pyramids along that orientation. So it kind of, if this is true, if this news report is true, I still haven't seen the scientific report, but if the news report is true, it kind of throws a lot of light on how all that gigantic building material was transported, and that kind of answers many questions about the construction of the Great Pyramids. Okay, Varun Diman says, when will Kalki Avatar come? I really don't know. I mean, it's said that Kalki Avatar will come one of these days, and that will be the end of Kali Yuga, and everything will be fine again. Kalki is the next incarnation and the next avatar of Lord Vishnu, of Shri Vishnu. Well, if I knew, then I would be a god myself, wouldn't I? I'm not, sadly. So I don't know when it will happen. Sorry. Advait Singh says, have you read the book The Hunt for Red October? And do you think that we may find ourselves in a similar situation? Well, I don't think I'm ever going to be on a submarine. I'll make sure I never go on a submarine. I don't like being 300 meters under the ocean, in a metal tube. So I probably won't find myself in a similar situation. But yes, I have read the book long, 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 long ago, like really long ago. And it's a very good book. They even made a movie with Sean Connery, who passed away a couple of years ago. I mean, reasonably recently, one of the great actors. Uh, so it's about this. It's about this Soviet submarine, nuclear submarine that's on patrol, and it goes rogue. And the Soviets are worried that that the captain wants to defect to the US. The Americans are worried that it's actually, it's gonna set off a nuclear attack on the US and so on. So that's the situation. And there seemed, if I remember correctly, there is a mutiny kind of situation on the ship, and the captain faces a mutiny. There's danger that he will be overridden. There could be a message to launch a nuclear strike as well. I don't remember the details, but yeah. So what the plot, the thing that drives the plot, or the basis for the plot, is that when you are in a submarine under the ocean on a long mission with essentially no communications from with your base, from because submarines are deep down, right, under the ocean, then when you receive orders and those orders seem extreme, like essentially launching a nuclear strike, what do you do? Do you just blindly follow the orders, or do you use logic and try and make sense of the order, and something tells you that something is wrong, then you don't carry out the orders? And is it ethical to do so? Is it wrong to do that? And so on. So that's kind of the dilemma that submarine captains find themselves in, and India is soon gonna have, if we don't already have, submarines on, I mean, nuclear submarines on nuclear patrol, ballistic missile submarines. And yeah, so in the future, I hope it never happens, but Indian submarine captains also, I mean, India will have to devise a system by which communication is done and the right kind of orders are given to the submarines that are on patrol. And they could be on patrol maybe in the Bay of Bengal, maybe somewhere else far away from shore. So yeah, there are all kinds of things you have to take into consideration. Let's say you have an Indian submarine, nuclear submarine, ballistic missile submarine that is on patrol in the Bay of Bengal. Now, the Bay of Bengal to us looks like it's our neighborhood swimming pool, right? But it is a tremendously large piece of maritime real estate. And let's say you have a submarine over here, and if it's here and you measure the distance to Vishakhapatnam, that's almost 1,000 kilometers away. So you are 1,000 kilometers away from your shore, and you receive an order that makes it look like there was a nuclear attack on India, and then you have to retaliate, and you have to launch a response immediately. So, do you keep the captain in charge of the decision, or is there some other way you would control the submarine to launch a nuclear attack on demand? Lots of considerations that have to be evaluated when deciding what sort of mechanism to use. So it's very interesting from that perspective. Yes. Playing with Code says, which is the best geopolitics book for complete beginners? There is no best geopolitics book for complete beginners. None exists. But I have a geopolitics course, and you can see the link in the description. That is for beginners. And if you take that course, it will actually help you understand geopolitics from first principles, and it's it's perfect for absolute beginners actually. So yeah, there's no book. There's the course, which I eventually will turn into a book. So yeah, okay. Fire and Ice says, why do the Delhi metro trains have flat faces? Why not aerodynamic peak heads like the RRTS, Vandebharat, etc.? Well, ideally, you want the train engines, the first thing, the front facing compartment, to be aerodynamically shaped. But if the maximum speed isn't that great, then it doesn't need to be very aerodynamic. Aerodynamic effects come into play only at high velocities. So if you have a train that travels at, let's say, in excess of 120 to 150 kilometers per hour, then it really needs to be aerodynamically designed, shaped. If you have a train that travels 250 kilometers per hour, it needs to be shaped like a bullet. So that's why we call those trains bullet trains, like the Shinkansen trains in Japan, the TGV trains in France and Europe, etc. But if you have a train, so I am not sure what the top speed of the Delhi metro trains is. Okay, I have never used them. I've never even seen a Delhi metro train station, but I'm aware it exists. I'm not sure what the top speed is. I'm assuming the top speed isn't great, because I would assume that you don't need such high speeds within a city itself, and you may have lots of stops. So why travel at 150 kilometers per hour when you have stops that are just 2 kilometers apart? Doesn't make sense. So when you have a metro system with lots of stops, each space separated maybe 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers or so, then your top speed does not need to be that high. You may have a top speed of, let's say, 60, 70, 80 kilometers per hour. For that, you don't need those aerodynamic shapes. So maybe that is the reason why. That's what I'm guessing. I haven't ever spoken to any engineer from the Delhi Metro. I haven't even seen the Delhi Metro, but I'm assuming because the top speed isn't that great, that's why you don't need that aerodynamic shape. But whenever the bullet trains start in India, you're gonna have those bullet-shaped noses, which makes a lot of sense because they'll be traveling at such high speeds. Oh yeah, we already took this. We already took that. Okay, what's next? Known one says, what are the white spots on Ceres? So now the question for most people is going to be, what is Ceres? So let's go and it's an asteroid. Let's go to Google search and take a look at the image of Ceres. Okay, so here we have it, CERES. It's the largest asteroid that it's a dwarf planet. Okay, and as you can see, it rotates. How nice! So you have this bright spot, this bright white spot on Ceres, and that's what no one is asking about. So I believe. See, I'm not going to read any of these articles. I'm assuming. I'm aware that this existed. Most likely, what the case is that this dwarf planet may have a subsurface ocean of water. Now, if you have a crust and then you have a subsurface ocean of water, or let's say if you don't have a subsurface ocean of water, you may have ice below the surface. That's also another possibility. So let's say you have ice below the surface and you get impacted by another asteroid, another space rock. And that space rock, its impact digs a hole into the surface of this dwarf planet, and that ice gets exposed. Then when the sun shines on that ice, on the ice crystals, it's going to be very highly reflective. That ice, as we know, ice is a very highly reflective material. You've heard of blindness, ice blindness, right? So that is because of the highly reflective property of ice. So maybe this bright spot could be ice that was exposed because of an asteroid impact. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that there is a subsurface ocean of water which was again exposed to the vacuum of space because of an impact by an asteroid, and that froze solid, and now that ice is reflecting. So that is most likely the cause for the white spots on series as far as I can see. I've not read the latest findings and latest reports, but it makes sense logically. And maybe you guys, if you are interested, you can, if you're curious, then you can check it out. I would highly encourage checking out this stuff because this fascinates me. Science and astronomy, astrophysics fascinates me very much. Rajat Hatwar says, why do people in southern India marry their cousins when it's wrong in Hinduism and when they know it's causing genetic problems? Look, I don't know. I know that there is this tradition of consanguinity, consanguineous marriages, cousin marriages, etc. in various parts of the world. I think in various parts of Europe, you had royalty that married their cousins and all that. You had uh, I think in the Islamic world, it's pretty commonplace. I think the Pakistanis are some of the most inbred populations in the world, and in some parts of India also apparently there is a cousin marriage, etc. Uh, I think, look, in Hinduism, I'm sure it's we don't have any one book in Hinduism, right? We have millions of texts. Hinduism isn't about one book. Hinduism is a library. So I don't know. Everybody has their own traditions and local traditions. I mean, if you go to India, uh, the food changes every 50 kilometers. The dialect changes every 50 kilometers. The local customs and traditions also change every 50 kilometers. So I suppose in some parts of India, you still would have. I mean, you would have some such customs like cousin marriage, which yeah, well, it exists. What can I say? I'm who am I to pass judgment about whether it's right or wrong or whatever? We know from medical perspective, from a scientific perspective, that marrying somebody who is closely related to you is not great because it's gonna there's a higher likelihood of having genetic defects in the offspring and the children. So cousins are pretty closely related, right? One fourth the same DNA essentially. um so yeah, I don't know why it exists, but okay, some people have the traditions, and who are we to question them? But yeah, it's not great for the genetic lineages. That's all I can say about this. Clash Cloud says, what's a charismatic personality? How to develop it? Well, I wouldn't know. I'm not charismatic. I think a charismatic person is somebody who everyone likes, or a very large number of people like somebody who is just you know very attractive, not just physically, but as a person, as a through their personality traits. One of the things I think that goes into having a charismatic personality is that you need to be a very good speaker. You need to be able to command people's attention when you speak. You need to have the gift of the gab, and not just smooth talking, but you need to be able to express yourself powerfully and effectively. So essentially, you need to be a great public speaker. I think that is essential for somebody to be charismatic. And then you also need to have some authenticity and some what would you call it? Some leadership trait, or something that makes people want to follow you, and that makes people trust you, I believe. Yeah, trust is important. Uh, Charismatic people are generally trusted by a lot of people. So yeah, I guess all of that goes into these are the different aspects of a charismatic personality. So I would say that the core aspects are you need a great amount of conviction in yourself, self belief. Secondly, you need to be a great speaker. You need to be persuasive. Thirdly, you need to be trustworthy. You you cannot be charismatic if no one trusts you. So yes, so I would say that these are some of the factors that go into being a charismatic person. How do you develop it? First of all, you need to be a person of substance. I know there are many crooks who are charismatic. I would never recommend going down that path. If you want to be a charismatic person, do it the right way and and be a genuine person of substance. So first of all, be a person of substance. Yes, you need to have some really genuinely good qualities, some genuinely good expertise of some kind in some field or the other. And then you need to be able to speak really well, convincingly and powerfully, and you need to be a trustworthy person, and you need to be able to communicate that the fact that you're trustworthy, and people should actually want to follow you. So all of that goes into being a charismatic personality. How do you develop that? I think it's through self-development, introspection, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, and what you want to achieve in life. Do you even have to be charismatic? I mean, there are lots of people who don't need to be charismatic. Let's say you're a computer programmer, as an example. You don't need to be charismatic. Let's say you are a nuclear weapons developer. You don't need to be charismatic. Let's say you're a writer. You write. You don't need to be charismatic. It's only if you want to be a politician or a military commander or something like that that you would need to be charismatic, or an actor or an actress, right? Apart from that, you don't need charisma. Of course, if you are charismatic naturally or through practice, then yeah, it helps your social life. It helps you get your thing, your work done, and all that. So from that perspective, yeah, you may want to develop a charismatic personality. So yeah, I am no expert in this. I'm just saying, giving you a rough idea. That's all. Okay. Okay, Richard says, I'm a Christian by birth, but after learning about the tactics played by the French, I'm confused about my own religion. I've always been loyal to my Lord. Do you have any suggestions for me? Listen, I would say you have to follow your conscience. That's all. If you truly believe in the religion that you are born in, then you should follow that. Absolutely. Of course, we know that the problem is when you come to know the truth. We know what the French did. And we know what the Portuguese did. What the Portuguese did was even worse than what the French did. There was nobody as bad as the Portuguese in India. The means by which they converted people to Christianity were horrific, and they used Christianity as a tool for material wealth and gain. I mean, if you look at the papal bulls, it's horrific. They authorized these essentially pirates to claim any land in which you had non-Christian people living there, and they were authorized to take those people as slaves, to enslave those people, and divest them of all their wealth and all their mineral resources and everything. And in India, I mean, there was the Inquisition, which Francis Xavier brought into Goa and other parts of, that whatever lands the Portuguese had grabbed, and the methods were brutal, brutal, brutal. And if you go to Pondicherry, other places where the French ruled, there are big churches there that used to be temples. Okay, those temples were destroyed and churches built on top. I mean, these are facts. I mean, look up the facts. That's my point. So once you know this, you're gonna be conflicted. If you have, I mean, you may pretend that everything is fine, but you can't lie to yourself, right? So that's the problem. So I would not make any personal recommendations. I would say the truth is something you have to discover for yourself, and then you have to follow your conscience as to whether the path you're following, the religious path you're following, is the right one for you or not. Do you truly believe in it? And it's a completely, totally personal choice that you have to make. So I would not make any suggestions. The only suggestion I would make to you is to study history. That is why history is so important. It's not about, it's just about knowing what happened, because unless you know what happened in the past, you will not know how the world that we inhabit, that we live in, came to be. And there are all these forces that were at play, that are still at play, that are trying to shape the world in various ways for their own personal benefits, using religion often. And certain religions are more amenable to be used politically and militarily. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what's the point? What's the purpose of religion? The purpose of religion basically is to give you a moral framework by which to live your life. Whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, is a secondary matter. But being religious and following a religious path means you have a moral and ethical framework by which to live your life. So you don't have to think too much. Now, then you have to ask yourself, this particular moral and ethical framework I'm following, is it really moral and ethical? That's what you have to ask yourself, and the answer lies in the chapters of history. So all I would say is Try and discover as much of the truth as you can, and follow your heart, follow your conscience. That's all I would say. Okay, netizen says, will we? When will we see nuclear powered vehicles? It would be almost forever lasting power source, right? Um, I think it was in 2019 that Vladimir Putin declared that Russia has a cruise missile that's nuclear powered, and that missile can essentially fly for months without stopping, maybe even longer. So yes, we already do have nuclear powered missiles. I'm not saying missiles with nuclear weapons in their warheads. No, not that. The propulsion is nuclear, probably a nuclear ramjet. So the Americans tested nuclear ramjets, I believe, in the 1950s or 60s, maybe 1960s. Okay, an airplane with a nuclear power plant in it, and the nuclear reaction, it heated the air and was the basis of the ramjet. A ramjet is uh, it's essentially a supersonic jet. You can use conventional chemical fuels in ramjets, but you can also have a nuclear ramjet. So yeah, I think the Americans tried it out, tested it out, and then they abandoned the concept for various reasons. Because I mean, you know, conventional fuels are much cheaper and much more readily available, and there's less of a chance of nuclear fallout if the plane crashes. There's zero chance of nuclear fallout if the plane crashes. But if you have a nuclear power plant on board, it's going to contaminate a whole large area and so on. But yes, the technology does exist. The Russians have it. They have missiles that have nuclear propulsion, probably ramjets. And there was this program in the 20th century to have large rockets, like massively large rockets, larger than today's Starship, SpaceX Starship, larger than that. And those rockets would be powered by nuclear explosions. And that was designed to take humanity to Mars. I think there's a documentary out there on YouTube, I believe, To Mars by A Bomb. To Mars by A Bomb. Check it out. I think it's still out there. I'd seen it many years ago. Uh, I think Freeman Dyson was involved in that project for some time, and then I think it was demonstrated. Its viability was demonstrated, but it was never taken to the logical conclusion, because obviously, if you detonate nuclear weapons in the atmosphere, it's going to have nuclear fallout, and why do that? Better stockpile those nuclear weapons for a future contingency, right? So yeah, so the technology isn't that hard to achieve, not that hard. And when it comes to submarines, we have nuclear powered submarines. We know that, right? A few nations have nuclear powered submarines. But those essentially are steam engines, steam powered submarines, and the water is heated to steam using the nuclear reaction in a nuclear reactor. But nuclear propulsion is a whole different story. But yeah, it's very much feasible. Even it's the technology already exists, but I'm not sure if and when it will be actually utilized. Abhishek Srivastav says, can the US print unlimited dollars? Look, India can print unlimited rupees if we want. Pakistan can print unlimited Pakistani rupees. But why would you do that? You do that, there's going to be tremendous inflation. The problem is that the US has the world's reserve currency, the US dollar. So, what does it mean that they have the world's reserve currency? So there was this agreement, the Bretton Woods Agreement. I think it was in the 1940s sometime, just a year or so before the World War II ended. And in this agreement, the US was obviously the dominant power by then. They had demonstrated that. So the agreement was reached that the US dollar will be uh, kept on a gold standard, and the US dollar will be the world's reserve currency. And everybody will accept US dollars whenever needed. And then this was enforced through the US military network across the world, the power projection capabilities that the US has. So that's how the US dollar became the reserve currency of the world. Now, what does it mean that my currency, the US dollar, if I'm the US, what does it mean that my currency is the world's reserve currency? It means that if I owe China $1 trillion, and I'm the US. I can just print $1 trillion and give it to China, paper money or electronic money. It doesn't have to be backed up by gold or oil or anything. People all around the world accept the greenbacks, the US dollars. So I can print a trillion of them and repay my debt to China if I have to. But if I am an African country, okay, if I am an African country, let's say I am Niger, and I owe the US $100 million, then I will not be able to print the $100 million because I don't have the printer. So I will have to trade with other nations. I will have to export uranium or whatever it is my nation has, whatever resources, and earn $100 million in return, and then use that money to repay my debt to the US. So I will have to earn that money by giving actual value to the nations I'm trading with. You understand? I'm going to have to give actual resources to earn that $100 million. But the US, so when Niger or Botswana or South Africa or Pakistan or Sri Lanka, when these nations have to repay debts in US dollars, they have to earn that money first by providing actual value, and only then can they repay those debts. But the US, if it owes $1 trillion, gazillion dollars, it can just print the money, okay, or do quantitative easing, like they say, okay, and give that money. And that's the advantage they have. So yes, they can essentially print unlimited dollars and export the inflation to other countries. Let's see how long this lasts. It's a Ponzi scheme. That's what it is. It's a Ponzi scheme. Okay, Pratik Vora says, why is the global map shown in most places a distorted version of the actual geographical map favoring northern hemispheric countries? Okay, let's take a look at that. Let's go back to our friend Google, and let us see what the Mercator projection does. Okay, where is Google? Here is Google. Mercator projection. Mercator, whatever. So Mercator. So see what the Mercator projection does is that it takes a sphere and superimposes it on a two-dimensional rectangle. A sphere is a three-dimensional object. The Earth is not a perfect sphere; it's an oblate, squashed out kind of sphere, but it's roughly spherical. So you take this sphere and you distort it out of proportion, and you superimpose it on a rectangular two-dimensional surface, and then what it does is this. So the truth is, I'll tell you what the truth is. You look at this. Okay, let's just look at this. The truth is that Africa is larger than the whole of Asia. From east to west, Africa, the distance between the eastern tip of Africa and the western tip of Africa is greater than the eastern tip of Eurasia and the western tip of Eurasia. That's how large Africa is, or at least it's comparable, roughly comparable. But if you look at it, it looks tiny. Greenland looks gigantic when it's actually the size of roughly Sri Lanka or something, and so on. So the northern hemisphere is made to look much larger, and the nations of the land masses of the southern hemisphere look much smaller. I'm not sure if it is by design. I mean, here, yeah, here you can see how they've done it. So I'm not sure if it's by design, because most of the land masses that we know of exist in the northern hemisphere. But yeah, there are different ways of doing this, but it gives you a very a distorted understanding of the world, and it kind of favors the nations in the northern hemisphere, especially the European nations, especially North America. Not sure if it's done on purpose, or if it's by design, or if it's just by accident, but it is what it is. Yeah, so that is what it is. It's because you're essentially attempting to superimpose a three-dimensional image onto a two-dimensional surface. Okay. Vitrik Martinez says, as the general election is going on in India, I've been noticing a serious amount of a surge of foreign interference on social media. What can the government of India do about this in the next term? Look, foreign interference is a fact of life, especially when it comes to the West. The West has is a past master at interfering in the internal affairs of other countries. There are only four genuinely sovereign countries in the world, which is the US, Russia, China, and India. And even when it comes to these four nations, they are all susceptible to foreign interference, especially the non-US countries, the non-Western countries. Think about it like this: the Western countries see unlimited US interference in everything. Let's go to the West, okay? Let's get rid of the pyramids of Giza, okay? So when it comes to the nations that are part of the EU, the European Union, and when it comes to the nations that are part of NATO, there is unlimited US interference in their elections, in their day-to-day functioning, in their governance, in everything. The largest and most powerful nation in Western Europe is the US, even though the US is not part of Western Europe. So that's what they always do. They control nations like South Korea and Japan and Germany and Italy. They have a tremendous amount of influence and control in Africa as well. The Middle East is has been what shall I say? And so they want to do that in India as well. So they have various ways of doing it. They can allegedly create artificial political parties in India, allegedly. Okay, they have networks of NGOs in India which receive funding for various purposes like industrial scale religious conversions, and those religious conversions are also, the objective is to control those converted populations and make them do things that are against the interests of their nation, and so on. And then obviously there is social media. So you can have various think tanks that put out certain opinions about India, that India's democracy is backsliding, that minorities apparently are under threat in India, they are oppressed, etc., which flies in the face of every single fact that the world knows. Then so that you have think tanks that do this. Then you have various big publications that put out all these articles which are kind of slanted against India. Then you have Indian origin professors and so on, who will weigh in with those distorted opinions, the Gangadins and the brown coolies. Oh yeah, I should not use the word brown coolie, right? The term brown coolie, I've already landed into controversy once. What's his name? I forget the guy's name. Okay, forget about him, he's not important. And then you have various social media stars and influencers who will say that India's constitution is under danger, India's democracy is under threat, and Mr. Modi is a dictator. So yes, there is this multifaceted, multi-pronged attempt, constant barrage of propaganda, and the objective is to interfere in the electoral process in India, and to shape the narrative and the opinion and the perception about India on the global scale. So what they are doing, see, most likely, if things go well, Mr. Modi wins. Okay, I'm pro Modi. I mean, I make no secret of that. I want Mr. Modi to come back to power. So hopefully, if everything goes well, as is most likely, Mr. Modi wins. But these foreign nations, these foreign powers, they know that Mr. Modi is likely going to win with a big margin. What they're actually doing is they are setting the stage for attacking India and Mr. Modi during Mr. Modi's third term. Okay, because the West sees India as an emerging threat. The West wants to control the entire world. They already made a big mistake with China by aiding and abetting China's rise, and now they don't want India to be the next China. Right now, India, like I said, from the hard power perspective, it's just one fourth of what China is. China is four times more powerful than India from a hard power perspective. But in 20 years' time, in 10 years' time, India will be a totally different beast if the economy keeps on growing. And they don't want that to happen. So they will do their best to malign India so that India's economic opportunities kind of dwindle, and they don't want India to grow economically. They will do their best to hamper India's economic growth, and so on and so forth. So that's why you see what you're seeing, and you're going to see more and more of that as you go forward. Okay, there you have it. Okay, Okay, let's see what else do we have. Tejas says, why did Alexander the Tyrant not face any resistance in Egypt? Was Darius and were the other Achemedian kings cruel towards them? That's a good question. My guy Tejas has read some history, hasn't he? Okay, let's go to the map. Yes, so here's what happened. So in the year, what year was it? 300 and something, 327 BC or 329 BC. Or, look up the dates. I don't remember dates. But somewhere around that time, Alexander the Greek, Alexander the Tyrant, uh, dictator of Macedonia, uh, his father dies, King Philip, and Alexander has suddenly is thrust into this position of the inheritor of the kingdom of his father, Philip. His father is assassinated essentially, and the assassin is killed. So nobody knows until today what was the motive of the assassination. Was Alexander's mother involved in the assassination? Was Alexander himself involved, or was it somebody else? We don't know. So Alexander becomes the king, and then he has to subdue various kingdoms in Greece itself. He devastates the city of, what was it, Thebes, was it? He sells half the population into slavery, and then he decides to carry on with his father's plans to invade Persia, the old enemy. And so then they cross the ocean over the Aegean Sea, and they cross over into Anatolia. At that time, much of Anatolia was under Persian control, but the people were okay with the Greeks coming in because the region always oscillated between Persian control and Greek control, and the people were mostly Greek ethnically. So he crosses into Anatolia. He defeats the Persians in a battle somewhere in Anatolia. I don't remember where it was. And then he comes eastwards. And then before he goes down south to Egypt, he destroys the city of Tyre. Now, where is Tyre today? I need to find Tyre. Tyre is somewhere in Lebanon. Here it is, the city of Tyre. So the city of Tyre used to be an island, okay, just a few hundred meters off the coast. Today it is all together, but it used to be an island, and Alexander besieged the city, and eventually, after several months, he was able to break the siege. I mean, break into the city, and then he unleashed all kinds of barbarities and atrocities, crucified tens of thousands of people, and horrific stuff he did. Okay, entire. And then he goes down south into Egypt. And what he finds is that the Egyptians are happy to see Alexander because they had been under Persian occupation. Okay. It wasn't Darius the first, it was Darius the third, if I remember correctly. But I don't think the Persians were especially cruel towards the Egyptians or anything. They were simply a powerful empire and they occupied Egypt. So the Egyptians kind of saw Alexander as a liberator. So Alexander just walks into Egypt. Egypt opens its gates to Alexander. There's no real battle or anything. And Alexander installs a governor in Egypt. His name was Ptolemy, and his descendants were the kings of Egypt. So that's the beginning of the Greek rule over Egypt. And our emperor Ashok, he knew of Ptolemy. I don't know which Ptolemy it was, the first, second, third. He called him Tulamaya. Tulamaya. Anyway, so what happened is that the Greeks just allowed Alexander to waltz in and take the country. That's what happened. And then Alexander did only one good thing in his life, essentially. He built a city that the Arabs called Al Iskandriya. It is called Alexandria. The one city that he built that still stands. He is alleged to have built many more cities. We don't find any sign of that. But this one city was built by him apparently, Alexandria, Al Iskandriya. So I don't think the Persians were especially significantly cruel towards the Egyptians. It was like, when when whe- when the British took over Bengal from Siraj ud-Daulah, etc., then the people of Bengal saw the British as liberators because of the because they were tired of the rule of Siraj ud-Daulah. So it was kind of like that. But I'm not sure if the Persians were very cruel or heavy-handed towards the Egyptians. Not sure about that. But very interesting question over here. Tells you that Tejas has been reading history. Excellent. I like it. Good job. Okay. Let's see some other questions. Pranav Sharma says, your opinion on the true boundaries of Akhand Bharat. Okay, what is Akhand Bharat? Let's go back to the map. It's Greater India, historical India. Look, there are different opinions and different versions of what Akhand Bharat is. Uh, See, the thing about Bharat, India, is that India is not merely a nation state. Today, India has been recast since 1947 as a mere nation state by our small minded so called founding fathers, so called. Okay? But India is not a nation state. Historically, for thousands of years, India has been a civilization state. And when it comes to India's civilizational outreach and India's civilizational um, uh, umbrella, India's civilizational footprint, it goes all the way across Asia. China has been deeply, deeply, deeply influenced civilizationally and culturally by India. So has Japan, so has Korea. The whole of Southeast Asia, going from Brahmadesh, Myanmar, to Suvarnabhumi, Thailand, to Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, etc. And Indonesia, obviously the Majapahit Empire. Indonesia's golden age was its Hindu kingdom empire, the Majapahit Empire. Then you had Champa, obviously the so-called South China Sea is actually the Champa Sea. The Champa were all Hindus, and the Cholas obviously had their conquest all the way to the Philippines. The Spanish destroyed Hindu Philippines. They converted the Filipino people to Christianity, and they destroyed the system of the Filipino Rajas. And Philippines were called Maharlik at the time, and they used to have Sanskrit inscriptions, and they were all Hindus, and that was destroyed. So if you look at Akhand Bharat, and if you look westwards, obviously Gandhar was part of Bharat, which is Afghanistan. The true border of India westwards is the border with Iran, the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan with Iran. That's the true historic border of India westwards. And during the time of Shri Chinggis Khan, the borders of Tajikistan were the borders of India. So India and Tajikistan shared borders during the time of Shri Chinggis Khan. Okay, and there is this gate over there, the gates of hell or whatever they call it, the hot gates or something they call it, uh, which was kind of the border between Tajikistan and Bharat. And northwards, we just gave this up. Tibet was very much part of our civilizational zone of influence. We never conquered or occupied Tibet, but Tibet was always culturally and still is culturally Indian, whichever Tibetans are still left. So, if you look at Akhand Bharat from a civilization perspective, it's a much, much, much larger area. If you go back 2000 plus years, the whole of Central Asia was, you had temples, viharas, stupas all over the place. All of Central Asia, all the stans, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, so on and so forth. You had Hindu temples in Azerbaijan and Armenia, okay, 2000 years ago, more than 2000 years ago. And well, I will not say that Iran is part of Greater Bharat because India is not. Iran was an empire 3000 years ago, the Hakshamanish Empire, the Achaemenid Empire. But yeah, India's civilizational footprint is very, very, very wide. And let's not even go down south to Africa and all that because tremendous Indian influence there as well. But if you want to define what is Akhand Bharat as a civilization state entity, I would not today want to include Indonesia, even though culturally they are, well, our cousins. But I would say Myanmar would be part of it. In 1935, the Burmese, they voted to remain part of Bharat. They did not want a separation of Burma from India. But the British nevertheless went ahead and forcibly separated Burma from India. In 1935, the Burmese had voted not to separate from India. Nobody teaches you this. None of your great history teachers, your eminent historians, or your textbooks will teach you this, that Burma had voted to not separate from India in 1935. So there are different definitions of Akhand Bharat, etc. Today, Bharat is what it is. Today, Bharat is not even full Bharat. Forget about Pakistan, Afghanistan. The map that we have, the official map, we don't even control all of that. Some parts have been bitten off by other countries. We will get that back in due course of time. Don't worry, but it's going to take time. So patience. Okay. All right. What? See, listen. How many times do I take the same questions? Okay. I suppose some of you have come in just recently. This live stream has been going on for 90 minutes. So yeah, once the live stream is done, you can go back and look at the questions. I've taken many of the questions that are being asked right now. All right. Mm, okay. Mayuri says, please throw light on the intellectual migration of German scientists during the post World War II period, especially Werner von Braun, who contributed to American dominance in science and technology. The Americans had this something called Operation Paperclip, in which they offered blanket amnesty to all the top German engineers, rocket scientists, etc., and they shipped them all forcibly to the US. So Werner von Braun, he was Germany's greatest ever missile engineer, rocket engineer, designer, whatever you want to call it. And he, at the first opportunity, with his brother, I believe, surrendered to the US, to American soldiers, and they shipped him to the US. The Americans got hold of as many rocket parts, etc., missile parts, etc., as they could, and shipped them off to the US as well. The Germans were Werner von Braun. Okay, he was the pioneer of not just the world's first cruise missile, but also the world's first ballistic missile. The V1 or V2? V2 was the ballistic missile, no, the cruise missile, and V1 or whichever one was the first ballistic missile. So the Americans got their hands on all these rockets and on the main scientists, shipped them off to the US, and they were essentially uh, kind of under detention. Okay, but eventually Werner von Braun became the head of NASA. He never looks very happy in the pictures that you see of him. He knows that he is there. Well, is kind of under detention, kind of not really free to go. I think after he reached the US, I don't think he ever went abroad. I may be wrong, but I can't recall any. I don't have any memories of him of seeing any of his activities outside of the US after he reached the US. And he became the head of NASA eventually, Werner von Braun, and he developed the Saturn V rocket, which took human beings to Mars, or to the moon, not Mars. The most powerful rocket ever of its time, and only eclipsed recently by the SpaceX Starship, and so on. So it was not just von Braun, but others as well. And the Russians also had their own program of getting as many German scientists, rocket engineers, etc., as possible. But the Americans got the best of the lot, and the Russians got whatever is left. And the American space program was entirely based on German rocket and missile technology, and it was entirely done by German rocket scientists and engineers. And the Russian space program was once again entirely based on the German rocket program, rocket and missile program. And over there too, the initial main scientists and engineers were Germans. And then you had people like Korolev, etc., who did their own thing. And then the Russians, the Soviets, transferred one of their rockets, the technology, to China. And the basis for that also was German technology. So the US, Russia, the USSR, and China, they have space programs that are based on German designs. So the German space program, rocket and missile program, was the genesis, the fountainhead of the American space program, the Russian Soviet space program, and the Chinese space program. It's India and Japan that have developed completely independent space programs. All these others have just ripped things off. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Why reinvent the wheel when you have a wheel? You take the wheel and you make it better. So there's nothing right or wrong about it. It's actually smart to just copy and iterate and improve over that. So yeah, that in short or in long is the deal. Ayush Pandey says recently Rajnath Singh said that India will build 6 aircraft carriers. I highly admire submarines. Yeah, you've been listening to me, have you? Submarines are the principal ship of the 21st century. Is this a good step? Look, as far as I know, he has made a statement. Look, I can say that I'm going to develop 27 spacecraft by 2040. Me personally, doesn't mean I'm going to be able to do it, or maybe I want to do it. But you can make certain statements. You don't have to walk the talk. So, as far as I see it, it's a statement. Maybe there could be one more in the offing. But 6 aircraft carriers, if let's say conservatively one aircraft carrier will cost, let's say, $5 or $6 billion in today's money. Let's be conservative and let's say it just costs $5 billion. Okay. So if you want to have four more, we have two right now. That's $20 billion. Imagine how many submarines and other scary things you can buy with $20 billion. So do you really want to spend $20 billion on this incredibly concentrated lethality, which is a tremendously enticing and visible target, slow moving target? Yeah, it can defend itself with aircraft and all that, but come on, in today's world, we have seen how cheap technology can defeat the best systems. Look at what's happening in Ukraine. Look at what the Houthis are doing, and so on. So my point is, I don't think we're actually going to build six. I think they'll probably make one at least, one more at least. I wish that money was used for deadlier and scarier assets, like submarines, even cheap assets like missile boats, which can be really, really deadly. I mean, look at what we did to Karachi in 1971 with these cheap missile boats. Missile boats can be really, really effective, and they're really cost effective. Put three BrahMos missiles on a $20 million cheap vessel and see what damage it can do. And so on. So my point is, I'm not sure that this will actually happen. I am not. Look, if you have a gazillion dollars to spend, then by all means have 20 aircraft carriers. I have nothing against aircraft carriers personally. My point is, we have limited resources, and what we have to do is to optimize the use of these resources. So, are we a nation that has tremendous power projection capabilities right now? No. Right now, we have holes in our coastal defense. We don't have sufficient submarines. We don't have tremendous numbers of warships like the Chinese do. Cheap, disposable warships. First, build up the ability to safeguard your coasts and have no holes there. Then you build power projection capabilities incrementally. And you already have two aircraft carriers. So if you want to spend money because you need the prestige, have one more. But yeah, you need submarines. Submarines are the scary stuff. Submarines are invisible. You don't see them. And they can do tremendous damage. Yeah, you have technology, the magnetic anomaly detectors and whatever else. But submarines are scary for anyone. Okay, and they can do tremendous harm to the best of the vessels. So I would say submarines should be a priority. And we don't have enough submarines. I mean, North Korea has like three times, five times, I don't know how many times more submarines than us. You know, they may not have the best submarines, but they have quantity. And like Joseph Stalin said, quantity has a quality of its own. You have enough numbers of cheap stuff, it's gonna make a big difference. You take an aircraft, okay, cheap aircraft, MiG 21 class, not the MiG 21 itself, which is obsolete, but something which is new and of that ability, of that capability. And let's say one of these aircraft costs you $15 million, which is peanuts in today's money, okay, from the military perspective. And why not build 1,000 of those? I'm just giving a stupid example, okay, just to illustrate my point. So if you have 10, it's $150 million. 100 means 1.5 billion. 1,000 means 15 billion. For $15 billion, you get 1,000 fighter planes. Imagine what difference it makes. Even though they are cheap and kind of obsolete, you've got 1,000 of those, and you should see the speed and the acceleration that MiG 21s have, or a aircraft of that class has. Scary stuff. So even today, 1,000 of those would make a gigantic difference, and people would be scared of you. So quantity has a quality of its own. So I would say, instead of concentrating your lethality on these giant ships, distribute the lethality in an invisible and widespread manner. That makes more sense from my perspective. But obviously, I am no expert and I don't have the military rank. So who am I to say anything? All right. Uh, the way the Krishna says, which all nations in India's neighborhood should we have strong relations to control Indian Ocean region? We don't need great relations with anybody to control the Indian Ocean region. I'll tell you why. India, Bharat, occupies this God gifted position in the Indian Ocean region. This position gifted by the gods. Okay, look at the distance from here to here. It's almost 2,000 kilometers. We are projecting 2,000 kilometers down south into the Indian Ocean region. And from there, India can dominate the entire region if only India were to build the capabilities, the naval capabilities. ton of submarines and a ton of ships with long legs and missiles and a couple of aircraft carriers thrown into the mix because we already have those. You have that. You can project power all across the place. The sky is the limit. You can project power all the way to Antarctica if you want. And of course, it helps to have friends. So we have friends. We have good friends in France. The French are our friends. Réunion, both Mathura is Mauritius, of course, but Réunion is French, and the French have other assets over here as well. So Mauritius has this island called Agalega, which I will not show you if it is not okay. And we have another friend in the Seychelles. So we have good relations with Mauritius and Seychelles, and I'll leave it at that. We also have good relations with the Gulf nations. The UAE is pretty happy that India is doing well. Okay, the UAE is a good nation, a good friend to have. Oman is a good friend to have. You must have heard of the port of Duqm, or maybe you've not heard of it, but that's all right. And Singapore is a good friend. Sri Lanka, it's always good to have good relations with Sri Lanka. And Thailand, Myanmar, Bangladesh, of course. So I think we should have good relations with everybody as far as possible. Some of these nations are incorrigible, like Pakistan. Well, those are temporary nations, so it's just a matter of time. Maldives will learn the lesson sooner or later. But overall, I think India is a non-threatening nation, a non-hegemonic nation. Nations like the UAE, etc., they know that India is not going to turn up tomorrow morning with like 20 ships in their in their territorial waters. It's not going to happen. India is not that sort of nation. So they're actually enthused and happy about the fact that India is playing a more active and a pronounced role in freedom of navigation operations, etc., in the region, like in the Gulf of Aden, anti-piracy operations off the coast of Somalia, etc. So, yeah, so India is already doing a good job diplomatically and from the international relations perspective to have good and strong relations with a number of nations in the region. Indonesia as well. Even Australia is nowadays a friend of India's. You may not remember the days of the 1990s when Australia had a very different attitude and approach towards India. So yeah, so we have good relations with many countries, and it always helps to have friends. Why not? Kanhai Bhatt says, when is Dr. Niraj Rai's paper coming out? I'm not sure. I'll have to speak to him and ask him. It's been a while, but that's the process in science. You have to do it step by step, systematically. You have to follow the due process and all that. And eventually you get the result. So I'll need to speak with him. And maybe next time I'll tell you what the situation is. All right. Bai says, why is the biggest genocide in known history, the Hindu Holocaust, ignored by the whole world? Will Trump build a Holocaust memorial for the Hindus? Pakistan is a fake nation with brainwashed people. Look, first of all, it is not Trump's business to build a memorial, a Holocaust memorial for Hindus. The Hindus are not Trump's people. Trump doesn't serve Hindus. So why would Trump do that? It's not his business. It's not his problem. The problem is us. The number one thing is this, that there are no statistics, there is no data. I mean, the Turks and the invaders and occupiers who came to India and did all this devastation and genocide, they actually recorded everything. So some historians need to sit down and go through all these records and add everything together, tally everything up. How many lives were lost, how many people were massacred, how many temples were destroyed, how much wealth was taken out. All of that needs to be tallied, put together. It's just accounting. Somebody needs to do that. Somebody with the patience and the discipline to just wade through all this data and add it all up. But nobody wants to do that. And our so-called great eminent historians, court historians, they have willfully and deliberately stayed away from the subject. So none of the known books mentions a Hindu genocide. No academic research paper talks about a Hindu genocide. So then everybody can say, what Hindu genocide? Nothing happened. Tell me, show me a book, show me a research paper about Hindu genocide. And if you try to write a research paper, it will never get published in a Western journal or even in an Indian journal. So that's this kind of thing that's happened. They've created a system which denies what happened. So it can be rectified by the Indian government, but maybe now is not the time that they want to do it. Whatever. So it's going to take some concerted efforts and actions by Indian historians and Indian publishing houses to bring these facts forth. There is no doubt that the worst genocide in human history was the Indian genocide, the Hindu genocide, which started about 1,000 years ago, more than 1,000 years ago, in Sindh. Then the first region to properly really fall to the occupiers, invaders, the Turks, was Gandhar, Afghanistan, and then we know what happened. And if you put all the numbers together, you add up the Turkic genocide and the Christian genocide, which is the British and Portuguese and all the genocide, I think the figures will be horrifying. Over 500 million. Now, some geniuses with huge IQs will say, but India's population was 300 million. How can you say 500 million died? So for them, I would say, please learn some simple math and carry the population births and deaths over 1,000 years period, and then you will see a different sort of figures that will turn up. But you need a little bit of brain cells to understand that. Okay, yeah. So that's the deal. Giuseppe Di Fraia says, which system is please better for family structure, patriarchy or matriarchy in a society? Thanks. He's very controversial topic, you see. Uh, look, it is known that the US is now becoming a matriarchal, a female dominated society. And most kids grow up in single parent families, which are typically single mother families. So most children grow up with one parent, and that parent is a mother. Now, statistically, it is known, it has been demonstrated in the US that if a child grows up in a single parent household, and that parent is a father, then the child has a much lower likelihood of being depressed when they grow up, or being an alcoholic, or being a criminal, means going to jail. But if the same child, but the children who grow up in the household of a single mother are much more likely to be alcoholic, or much more likely to be depressed when they grow up, when they're adults, and there's a much higher probability of them being incarcerated for crimes. So from all that data, which is relevant to the social conditions of the US, it looks like single father families are superior to single mother families. So that's the limited information that we have from that perspective. And overall, if you look at it globally, most societies have been patriarchal societies. It doesn't mean that there's inequality and women are oppressed. That's feminist nonsense. Okay, it doesn't mean there's oppression of women and women are marginalized and all that. It means that the genders have different roles. Now they'll say, oh my god, you're talking about gender roles. How dare you talk about gender roles? There are no gender roles. Everybody should do the same, should do everything. That's all fine. But look, human history is 100,000 years old at least. Homo sapiens. And historically, whatever evidence you see is all patriarchal systems. There are very few matriarchal societies. The Chagos Islands were a matriarchal society, which the Americans and British destroyed. The Chagos Islands, here, so-called British Indian Ocean Territory, completely illegal occupation. This was a matriarchal society, which was destroyed by the Anglos. Then you have some matriarchal societies in Kerala, some in northeast India, the far east of India, and so on. But that's a big rarity. Most societies are patriarchal, historically heavy patriarchal. India, 10,000 years old civilization minimum, has always been overall a patriarchal society, and women had a great role to play in this. So I think all of this has evolved over time, and society evolves through natural selection again. So whatever is best for society is the system that is followed. So maybe from that perspective, patriarchy seems to be the best. I'm just saying. Okay, Tejas says there's a giant lake formed by a meteor, yeah, impact at Lonar in Maharashtra. Could that be the reason behind the formation of the Himalayas and other mountain ranges? Can meteors cause a shift in tectonic plates? Okay, let's go to the map and find this crater, Lunar Lake. So here it is in Maharashtra. Let's zoom out first and see where it is located. Okay, it's in Maharashtra. Okay, Lunar Lake. Now let's zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Where is it? Kuthegela. All right, let's zoom in. Here we are. So this is Lonar Lake, and as you can see, it's a circular lake, and this is the result of a meteorite impact. And this impact happened about, if I'm not mistaken, some 30,000 years ago or so. So the Himalayas started forming about 50 million years ago, and the Lonar Lake was formed about 30,000 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Shall we just double check it? Okay, let's go to our friend Google and find out how old Lonar Lake is. Where is Google? I'm so sorry. Once again, I put the map on the screen. Google, come on, Google. Okay, so let's see how old Lonar Lake is. So, as always, we must not believe Wikipedia, whatever it says, everything it says. But for the sake of brevity, let's just look at what Wikipedia has to say. Okay, so how old is this? How old is this? How old is this? How old is this? 22nd July 2020? No, no, no. This was designated. Okay. Okay, so about 50,000 years or 570,000 years. So it's between half a million years and 50,000 years old. Okay. So the oldest is half a million years. At most, it is half a million years old, 570,000 years old. But the Himalayas started forming 50 million years ago, way before Lonar Lake ever existed. Okay. So that's why it's clear that the Lunar Lake, the impact, meteorite impact that formed the Lunar Lake, is not responsible for the formation of the Himalayas. Now, the major question you're asking is that, can a meteorite impact or asteroid impact, affect the movements of tectonic plates and create and cause mountains to be formed? Well, we know of a few major meteor impacts. Let me give you some examples. Let's go back to the map. So here's the map once again. Let me go to Canada, for example. You go to Canada, and there is something called the Manicouagan Lake. Now, where is Manicouagan Lake? It's a gigantic piece of real estate. Is it here? So what is this called? This is a different one. This is Via Shakimi, but this is also two meteor impacts. And these are two meteor impacts that happened at very different times. But it looks like it's the same event because they're right next to each other. But no, it's not the case. Now, where is Manicouagan? Manicouagan is here. This is Lake Manicouagan. Manicouagan. This was also the result of a meteorite impact. So as you can see, the Earth has taken lots of meteorite impact. There was one massive, ginormous impact that happened in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And there's a village called Chicxulub somewhere here. Where is Chicxulub? Has to be somewhere here, which is kind of at the epicenter. Let's just Google it quickly instead of searching for it in the dark. Chicxulub. Here it is here. So this is essentially like ground zero of that meteor impact. And there is a crater that's buried underground. Half of it is under the ocean. More than half of it is under the ocean. It's a crater with concentric circles. And that impact happened 66 million years ago. And it was the impact that contributed to some extent to the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs. So that impact event, the Chicxulub impact event, threw up mega tsunamis, supersonic tsunamis that were like 2 kilometers high. And they definitely caused the entire crust of the Earth to vibrate. And it definitely affected tectonic activity. And you had bigger impacts in the past as well. So when you have a gigantic meteorite impact, asteroid impact, or comet impact, it's going to affect plate tectonics. It's going to create volcanism on the opposite end of the planet, possibly, and even the same end of the planet, because magma will come out because it's a ginormous impact. But it won't throw up mountains. It won't create mountains. It will cause massive earthquakes like you've never imagined before. Earthquakes like 15 on the Richter scale. I'm just guessing. Okay. It's a logarithmic scale, so maybe not 15, maybe 12 or something. But yeah, so it will definitely, depending on the size of the meteorite that's impacting the Earth and the velocity with which it impacts. If it's, let's say, a 10-kilometer diameter meteorite asteroid like the Chicxulub impact, it's gonna cause it's gonna cause enormous damage to the Earth. It's gonna affect tectonic activity. It's gonna change the climate for a decade or 2 decades. It's gonna cause a mass extinction, but it won't cause the formation of new mountains and mountain ranges. All right. Okay. What else do we have? What other questions do we have? Ubendran says Mughals destroyed the great native classical dance forms and classical music system from Gujarat, Sindh, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Bengal, Kashmir. Why no research done on this topic? I wonder why no research is done on these topics. I find this topic fascinating. Dance, culture, art, music, and I've even done podcasts with a few notable people from the field of dance and culture. Uh, so I find this topic interesting, really fascinating. We need to know about this. Entire musical systems, dance systems, etc., have been wiped out, and almost nothing is left. Only folk dances are left in Rajasthan, Sindh. Sindh, nothing is left. Not even folk dances. Gujarat, you have folk dances. In Rajasthan, you may have some folk dances. Bengal, I don't know what baul is left. So yeah, so much has happened. It was cultural genocide, but nobody has bothered to document this. It needs to happen. It needs to happen. So yeah, I really appreciate this question. I agree with you that research should be done on this topic. So I'll take this question again because I'm getting this all the time. I answered this as the first question. The first answer I gave in this live stream was this, but let me just take it again. My opinion about the sudden accidental death of Iran's president is that, look, based on the information and data that we have, it looks like controlled flight into terrain, which means the pilots were it looks like they were in control of the helicopter. We just didn't realize that they are heading towards a hill. From all the information that's available in the public domain, I have seen nothing that makes me suspect that there was some foul play. Now, I'm not saying I'm ruling out the possibility that something may be amiss. I'm not ruling out this possibility that some other nation may be involved, or maybe somebody within Iran may be involved. The possibility exists, but I have seen no evidence that points in that direction. Israeli intervention, US intervention, some other power struggle within Iran, all kinds of theories exist. But what we have seen is a helicopter that essentially just flew into the hill or the mountain in extremely bad weather, fog and clouds and all that. And it was an old helicopter. It was not very modern and very well equipped and so on. And helicopters are inherently dangerous. I've said this so many times. So from what I see, I don't see any evidence of foul play. Obviously, I have not been there and I'm not investigated myself, so I don't know. I've only seen the news reports and some grainy video and some images. That's all. Based on that, I cannot conclude that there's any foul play or other nations involved. Possibility is there, but proof zero. So yeah, can't speculate and make and jump at conclusions in the absence of hard evidence, one way or the other. Okay. Xi Jinping, Winnie the Pooh. Ni hao, sir. Ni hao. So why are billionaires funding wokeism? What's the real end game and long term impact of wokeism on global societies? Well, if certain billionaires are funding wokeism, it means they're part of a larger agenda. Okay, that's what I can speculate. I don't know because I don't have the information. I don't know them personally. But it looks like there could be a larger agenda, and that's why they are part of this. What's the long term end game? The long term end game is to transform the entire world into a monoculture. A monoculture, an atheistic monoculture, which means that the only religion is wokeism. You don't believe in God anymore. You don't have any religion anymore, which means you have no moral compass or ethical framework by which to live your life, which means that there is no right, there is no wrong, and whoever is the influential voice is going to tell you what to do, and whatever they say is right. There's no right, no wrong. There's no evil. There's no good. You just follow your heart's desires and your physical needs, and all that. So it's all about materialism, consumption, and all that, and that essentially is great for the big corporations that want to make money. So the long-term impact of wokeism, if it just keeps on going, it will destroy societies, it will destroy culture, it will destroy civilization, and reduce human beings to zombies, or to put it better, slaves of the big powers. That's what could happen. Okay. Saurav Kumar Pathak says, how was the diet of ancient Indians different from Indians today? Let's think about ancient Indians, means we're talking about 5,000 years ago, right? We don't know. I mean, we may have some idea, but let's not talk about that. Let's talk about Indians 300 years ago, our recent ancestors, only 300 years ago. So if you go back to, so today's 2024, right? We're talking about 1724, which is at the end of the so-called Mughal empire, and when the Marathas were coming into the ascendancy and liberating India from the foreign occupiers. At that time, what was the diet of India like? This is before the hundreds of artificial famines the British created. So at that time, I imagine that the diet of Indians was much more protein centric than what it is today. Today's Indian diet is the consequence of 2 centuries, 2.5 centuries of starvation. So it's very carbohydrate centric. You go to any restaurant for breakfast, let's say, whether it's North Indian restaurant food or South Indian food or whatever, East Indian, West Indian, it's all going to be carbohydrates. If it's a Southern Indian food, it's going to be idlis and dosas and medu vadas and dal vadas and whatnot, all carbohydrates. You go to a North Indian restaurant, it'll be chole puri, it'll be parathas and whatnot, all carbohydrates and some dairy and similar stuff. It's all carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is starvation food. When you're dying of starvation, you want carbs because it's a quick source of energy. So dals and all that stuff. But I would imagine that before the era of starvation, forcible starvation that the British imposed on India, the people of India would have had a very different diet. So the diet which we think is part of our culture and tradition is what our ancestors had to adopt to ward off starvation. But unfortunately, none of our ancient cookbooks or such things survive because of the destruction of our libraries. Otherwise, we would have clear evidence of what our ancestors used to eat, what kind of diet they used to have. I am more interested in the macronutrient breakdown of the ancient Indian diet of 300, 500 years ago. If you ate a 2,500 calorie uh, diet per day, let's say, then what percentage came from fats, what percentage came from carbs, what percentage came from protein? That's the kind of breakdown I would be interested in. And I strongly suspect there was a much larger contribution from fat and protein. Maybe all three were equal. But today it's like 80-90% carbohydrates. And that's why Indians are all skinny fat and pot bellied and all that. So yeah, that's what I think. Obviously, I don't have sufficient data to conclusively prove this, but I strongly suspect that Indians ate much more protein back in the day. Now, what form of protein? Could be vegetarian protein, could be dairy based protein, and could be hunting protein. So there were certain classes of Indians who were the warriors, etc. They would hunt and they would eat meat. So meat has always been a part of India's diet, at least for some people. And there have been people, I'm sure, whose lineages have been vegetarian for thousands of years. That's also true. But yeah, this is a very interesting question, and I hope and I wish proper research would be done to answer this question. The answer to this question can be the genesis of at least 20 or 30 PhD theses, actually. Okay, Arushi says, what are your opinions on the river Saraswati? Is it still present in any form or completely dried up? Is Ghagra really Saraswati? Okay, so it's not the Ghagra, it's the Ghaggar. And most likely the Ghaggar is what is left of the ancient Saraswati. So every monsoon the Ghaggar swells up and she becomes this gigantic wide river that is just scary to look at. And that is the Ghaggar. And if you read the Rig Veda, the Saraswati is called the mother of floods. And when the Ghaggar swells up in the monsoon, she looks exactly like the mother of floods. So my opinion on the Saraswati is that it was, I think it's conclusively established now that the Saraswati existed. You have papers in the most prestigious scientific journal in the world, Nature, that refer to the Saraswati. We know that the Great Paleo Channel exists over here. You need to know how to look at it. There's this big dried out river channel that is visible properly in scientific satellite images. It drained out over here. Can you see any river draining out over here in the run of Kutch? There's none, right? So why is there this undersea paleo channel? There is the drainage channel of a long gone river. Where's the river? So the river existed, no doubt about it whatsoever, and it dried out because of climate change. And what's left of it in northern India is this seasonal, intermittent, rain-fed river, which is today called the Ghaggar Hakra. And in the ancient days, it extended all the way to the Sea of Saurashtra, and it was the great Saraswati, the mother of floods and the mother of knowledge and the mother of Indian civilization, and still worshipped across the world, even in Japan, as Benzaithin. Carbs are starvation food, and I hate it. If you look, I'm not saying carbs are bad. Okay, carbs have a role to play in everyone's diet. Fruits are great carbs. Vegetables are great carbs. Even chickpeas and rajma and all that, and rajma, dal, chawal, all that stuff is carbs. I mean, everything has its place in your diet, but your diet should not be lopsided in one direction, like 80%, 90% you eat carbs. Then imagine how your health will be. You need to have a balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So I don't hate carbs as such. I have nothing against you hating it. Okay, you can feel free to hate whatever you like. That's fine. I don't hate carbs. I am saying that the diet that Indians are used to, and which the diet that they consider to be their traditional diet, or the customary diet of their ancestors, it's not really so. It's the diet that was forced upon your ancestors due to starvation, created by hundreds of artificial famines induced by the British. And before the time of the British, Indians most likely had a very different diet. That's my point. Karan Nalawat says, why are Indians obsessed with degrees? Whenever you make videos on history, people are calling you a fake historian. I don't have a degree in history. How do I deal with negative comments? When will this mentality end? I don't care about the negative comments. It makes absolutely no difference to me. Okay? It affects me not at all. Now, why are Indians obsessed with degrees? Because of the system. The academic system, the job market, etc. It's all based on degrees. The piece of paper. You may have the best knowledge in the world. You may have the greatest skills in the world, but if you don't have the piece of paper with its stamp on it, then you will not get a job. And the system has been made such that Indians that you can't succeed without having that degree in your hand. So that's why Indians are obsessed with degrees. And today, if you're a business person, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't need a degree, you need skills. But still, those entrepreneurs, even today, their mindset is such that when they hire employees, they will look for, what's your degree? Did you get first class? Did you get second class? From which institution did you get your degree? All that stuff. Who cares? But yeah, it's going to take time for this to change. If you look at the US, if you look at the hiring pattern of companies like Tesla, SpaceX, they look at your skills, not your degrees. Degrees, of course, help, but skills are more important. Eventually, it will change. It may take another decade or so, perhaps. So, yeah, I have no degree in history, but why don't you bring me a historian and let's talk? Yeah. So, yeah, people say all kinds of stuff in the comments. It makes no difference whatsoever to me. I have extremely thick skin. People may not realize that. Makes no difference. I don't care about anyone's opinions. Yeah. The only opinion that I care about is a very few people and my own opinion. And as long as I'm satisfied that I've done my job properly, I don't care what people say. So I'm good with that. So it doesn't affect me. All right, 2 hours, 10 minutes done. I think we should stop over here. We should end over here. Um, Thank you so much for all your questions. I hope I've taken a wide variety of questions. I know there are 1,000 more questions I was not able to take. So all those of you whose questions I could not take, I apologize. I will keep doing this every week. As many questions I will take as possible. And I have another live stream coming up in on the 24th, I believe, which is on the 25th, which is going to be about mainly astrophysics and science, and the next one will be about history and geopolitics. So in those live streams, I will take the questions from the comments, not from the live chat. So yeah, so I will see you very soon in the next live stream. Until then, take care. Thank you so much for your viewership, for your questions. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you very soon. Keep raising your standards. Good night, good day. See you soon.